Relevant, reliable, and researched. This is Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering leading-edge news and information on today's most beneficial products and services. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
And welcome back to the program. Sterling Fox along with Tony Juventu, the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of BC, in studio on Key Pacific's Talk About Strata, and it's the summer mailbag session. Well, it's kind of an old school term, mailbag, because it's all emails this time around. And our next one, Tony, comes to us from Yvonne, who says, we live in Pitt Meadows. We're having pipes leak in the townhouses. Now, some of the residents think it's the owner's responsibility. Some think it's the stratas. It's the inside walls, says Yvonne. So who's responsible for the repairs, strata or the house owners? Can we get a simple answer for this, please?
Wow, loaded question. Simple answer? I think we all know now that after all these shows, there is no simple answer for any question.
I have yet to hear one.
Yeah.
And it's been well over almost a year and a half now, you and I have been doing this. I have yet to hear a simple answer. So have a go at Yvonne's problem.
You know, you could have an 8-unit townhouse on one side of the street and another complex and another strata of 8 units built by the same developer on the other side of the street, and find that they're absolutely different in the way that the property was designed and how the strata plan was filed at a different time and how they were surveyed, and there could be all kinds of differences. So it's very difficult to set a rule of thumb to any of these answers. But here's the issue with townhouses. Most townhouses have water systems self-contained in each unit.
Okay.
So the water pipes are frequently within the interior walls, not within joint walls. It's the inside walls, she says, which means it's in the interior walls of the units.
Right.
The dividing line of property between two units, if they're next to each other, is the middle of the wall between the two units.
Right.
So if you have a wall between two townhouse units, it's usually a double wall system anyhow. And so you'll have pipes separate on both units if they're shared.
Okay.
So that's not always the case, though. In some circumstances, we may have one single water system running into the townhouses, serving all the townhouse complex.
Right.
I can think of an older townhouse complex in Point Grey where they have a hot water boiler, water system, underground parking, and the townhouses up top all are on one unified water system.
Okay.
That water system is, under the definition of common property, it's something that's capable of being used in connection with one or more strata lots.
Okay.
So it's common property.
But it's sounding like, as you're explaining this, and I'm beginning to kind of get a handle on what you're saying, that because of the piping and the water pipes being on the inside walls of the individual unit, that you might be leaning in the direction of the responsibility being the homeowner in this case rather than the strata itself?
Well, as it turns out in Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge, quite a number of the townhouse complexes, each unit has its own water meter and has its own and has its own service line, and only a single line going into each unit separately. So their water systems, in most of them, there's the odd anomaly, but in most of them you'll find are actually self-contained within each townhouse complex.
Okay.
So that being said, it is generally the responsibility of each strata lot owner to maintain and repair their own plumbing system.
Right.
But here's catch-22. Maintaining and repairing something and insuring it are two separate issues. If the owner doesn't maintain and repair it, and a pipe breaks when they're not home, causing a flood and causing $30,000 of damage, that damage is probably done to all the original assets of the building, which are on the strata's insurance policy. So even though I had to maintain and repair my own plumbing in my townhouse, an insurance claim is likely going to fall on the strata's policy because it's the original flooring and drywall and insulation and all those things that were damaged as part of the strata's assets.
And because the homeowner failed to do the necessary repairs and maintenance on the pipes in the first place that burst, is there any fallback on the owner because the insurance of the strata might cover most of it? If there's any balance owing, would that be the responsibility of the owner, perhaps?
Well, the strata's insurance will cover all the original assets,
okay,
right?
Right.
If the owner has not maintained and repaired their strata lot or what they were responsible to maintain and repair, what the strata can expect to probably recover is the deductible amount, which could be $5,000 or $10,000 from the owner, and the owner would go to their own insurance company, homeowner policy to cover the strata's deductible and all their personal furnishings and those types of things, betterments, hardwood floors, things the owners had done over the years.
Right.
The problem is I think that a lot of people in townhouse complexes don't realize they're responsible for their own plumbing systems, right? But it's different. We could look at a townhouse complex not far away from Yvonne's, where the water system is actually under the bylaws the responsibility of the strata. Strata realized a long time ago that if they leave maintenance and repair of the water system up to the owners, they'll be plagued with insurance claims.
So they proactively decided, let's just change the structure of the bylaws here, and we'll assume financial responsibility for all the water piping in the place.
Well, and just think of this logically. What's cheaper, buying one hot water tank or 20 at the same time?
Sure.
And from a strata corporation perspective, if you're negotiating on behalf of all of the owners, you pass a bylaw, so the strata is responsible for the plumbing and the water delivery systems, and then the strata negotiates a single contract to do all the water lines when they need to be done at year 25 or 30 or hopefully longer. And then it's not only cheaper, but it also makes sure that the strata corporation, for their insurance perspective, can say to their insurer, this is done. We have done all of this work. So it's a little bit of a challenge also for depreciation reports, because depreciation planners need to understand whether the plumbing system is the responsibility of each strata lot owner,
right,
or responsibility of the strata
corporation.
Because
that might color the wording of the report.
Exactly.
So Yvonne, I don't know that we got that simple answer for you as you requested, but certainly Tony has clarified all the possibilities in this response. And have you had a chance to actually zoom in on Yvonne's complex and discover any more about the nuances of owners versus strata responsibility in this case?
We did a follow-up phone call, and indeed that it is, the plumbing systems are isolated. Each one has its own water meter, and where the water line enters the unit from there inside the unit is the responsibility of each townhouse complex, of each townhouse owner. The problem they have is it's not just one. There are leaks in many of the units.
Right.
The plumbing system needs to be replaced, and so I think that we've suggested that they have an information meeting as a group of owners to talk about doing this collectively, because it'll be much less expensive.
I know I want to move on to parking in a second, but just to follow up on that, can the Strata Council, recognizing that there is a deterioration of equal level going on in most of the units, can they pass a bylaw and compel all of the owners to, okay, folks, either we repair them now, or we're going to have to wait for some catastrophic event, and it'll be ridiculously more expensive. Do they do that?
Yes, and strata corporations, what they do is they pass a bylaw taking responsibility for a portion of a strata lot.
Okay.
Right? And so that's what they would do. But the catastrophic event will compound for them quickly.
Sure.
It won't be just the fact that someone has had a major pipe failure and their unit flooded out and two other units flooded out, but they will start dealing with things like rapidly rising insurance costs and deductible rates that no one can afford. So, it's deferring these kind of things and not collectively dealing with them just costs substantially more for everybody.
That's right. The more you put it off, the more it's going to cost. That's a good old rule of thumb. Yvonne, thank you for your email. Here's one from Brian, Tony. He says, I have a question regarding disabled parking and can't seem to get an answer from anyone on how it works. I have a client who is in a wheelchair, and we've been looking at condominiums in the downtown Vancouver area. All buildings, it seems, have disabled parking, with a number of people who either own it or have it assigned to them who are not disabled. Can a new person who comes into the building who is disabled require the strata to reassign the disabled parking spots to them? I've had so many different answers from strata managers, city hall, and lawyers, and with various contradictory responses. I'm quite confused on how this works. So how does it work? If you've got a disabled person's spot and you're not a disabled person, and a person who moves into the complex, can the Strata Council compel you to forfeit your spot because you're not disabled to a person who is?
Well, parking is a complicated problem, and this is another one of those things where
not another simple answer. Okay.
And it's because parking designations or allocations are unique to each strata corporation.
Okay.
Right? So we have different variations. Some parking is just general common property that's random access in the building, and it's allocated according to use by the Strata Council. Those are the easiest because as people have special needs for parking, council can just reallocate parking and they can solve the problem. Some parking is designated by the developer as limited common property. So if all the spaces were allocated to strata lots by limited common property, the council can't reallocate them.
Oh, okay.
Only a unanimous vote of the corporation. That means every owner of the corporation would have to vote in favor of reallocation.
So does this mean the disabled person who, if this is the response they get, is going to have to go and file some kind of human rights complaint or lawsuit of some description just to get a decent parking spot close to the elevator in the front door?
Well, what...
They're in a wheelchair, for crying out loud.
And I think the developers, for the most part, have dealt with this really responsibly. And
Okay.
what they've done is they've placed visitor parking in the most convenient area
Sure, of
of the
course.
building
Yep.
to be administered by the Strata Corporation, and that includes disabled parking or parking for assistance. So larger spaces that are level,
Yes.
close to the elevators for access. And in most buildings, that works really well because as people come along and they need a special assistance parking, the Strata Corporation can provide it for
Okay.
them, right? The difficulty is for strata corporations and strata councils is they have to remember they have to accommodate people, both those people who live in the building, the tenants and the occupants of the building, but also they have a duty to accommodate people who intend on living in the building. So it's not just about somebody coming along and owning a unit and saying, I need a disabled parking spot. Here's my certification that I actually have a parking pass. This is what I need. Council can't turn around and say, well, we have none available. You can't buy in this building. The strata, it'll be the duty of the Strata Corporation to accommodate this person somehow.
And is that under the Strata Act or the Human
It's
Rights
under the Human
Code?
Rights Code.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Right, and so it essentially what this individual needs to do is they need to find a building that has parking that's going to reasonably accommodate them. Not all buildings have parking that
Right.
easily accommodates.
And they're
a
still at
disabled
the
space.
shopping stage, clearly, so they're still looking around, but I think they're trying to get good questions to ask
Yes.
when they see something they like.
Yes.
That, yeah, we'd love to live here. Now, how do we ask the right questions to ensure we're going to get a decent parking spot for this disabled tenant or occupant?
Exactly. So the Strata Corporation can reallocate. We have another problem. Well, it's not really a problem. It's a unique situation, though, that's come up out of a research project we worked on through the spring around the installation of electric vehicle charging stations, which is
Oh.
kind of a similar parking issue.
Right,
Because
right.
what we have people who've decided to buy an electric car,
Yes.
and they need a charging station. Well, in certain parts of the building, the cost to install the station might be 100 or 200 feet away from the main electrical vault in the main electrical room, and the cost is absolutely prohibitive.
Right.
Or the parking is common property, and is it the Strata's responsibility to install the station? Or there are incentives from Ministry of Energy and BC Hydro to install a station where the Strata can put it in, but the Strata Corporation might not have the allocation of space available.
That's true.
We see the other problem we have is while the parking may be all common property, it may have all been designated by the owner developer as leases or licenses, right? People bought additional parking spaces or
Right.
additional allocations.
Yes.
Frequently, the Strata doesn't have a copy of those, and Strata corporations need to know on January 1st, 2014, the Form B information certificate is changing, and they're going to have to disclose on the form how parking and storage spaces are allocated.
Also, prospective buyers can come in and just with one quick glance get a complete lowdown on what the story is. And so this is where Brian and his disabled friends will really benefit because it'll be right there in the office
Absolutely.
when they go to look at the building.
Absolutely. And not only prospective buyers, but people who are disenfranchised in the building because they don't think parking's being fairly allocated
Right.
will be able to ask for a Form B. And the Strata Corporation is going to have to disclose the allocations.
And that's only 6 months away then.
It's only 6 months away, and Strata corporations need to get their parking plans put together and gather all their parking information so they can competently answer this information.
Okay. Brian, thank you for your email. The address again is radio@KeyPacific, QUAY, Pacific.com. Okay, so now we've checked out the matter of water escape and pipe repairs and also parking. When we come back, smile, you're on camera, and all the fun problems that go with that. This is Talk About Strata on AM 650.
Delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call. And there's more still ahead on AM 650.